I never had a 5th generation console growing up. I had a Genesis as a kid, and I just rode that wave for the rest of the decade, so Sega was really all I knew. I think I was too young to really understand what the Saturn was, but by the time I was 7, 8 years old, having loved Sega, knowing that there's this new Sega console coming out, I had to have it.
What makes the Dreamcast extra special for me is the fact that it was the first console I ever bought with my own money. I had a modest monthly scholarship that paid for transportation and food, and most of it for the first few months of school went just straight to my Dreamcast fund.
It sat in my room, I could play it pretty much whenever I wanted, and did I play too much of that thing? That thing was... I was probably too young to be given that much power. That thing is addictive.
I had one friend who got a Dreamcast, and, you know, it was just cool to be able to play a new console. Growing up, never really seeing any kind of Sega products ever, the Dreamcast to me didn't feel like, oh, that's the thing that you play Sonic on. It was this whole new thing.
I mean, the thing is with the Dreamcast, I don't think anybody has just one favourite game from that console. It's so difficult just to pick one. I think most people would probably pick Shenmue.
Ryo's tale of revenge and the slow way the story was delivered over the course of the game taught me to slow down and appreciate the finer details that developers packed in. It was a real turning point in the way that I enjoy games.
It actually influenced me to travel over there, see the real life locations, which are pretty accurate to the game. Cosplayed in the Ryo Hazuki outfit, which was pretty awesome.
Everything about it was amazing. The music, the free mechanics, the graphics, the dialogues, the story, the magic weather system, and how lively the world was. To this day, I still consider Shenmue to be my favorite game ever.
Sonic Adventure. Still a classic in my eyes. Especially as a child, that game will ignite your imagination in incredible ways. You save a city, you talk to people about their problems, you pull off all kinds of cool superpowers like flying around and spin dashing to different places and going really fast. That's an incredible game to play as a kid.
I saw an advert about 3 months before the Dreamcast launched in the UK, and I've never been so blown away by a game. There was some game footage in there, and I just remember looking at it thinking, this is such a massive leap in terms of kind of the Sonic games I was playing.
Funny story, when I first got the system in the game, my parents didn't get me a VMU, so I would just spend the first few months just playing through Sonic's story over and over again. I think I left the console on when I got to the Chaos 6 fight, and we had to go somewhere, and I knew as soon as I turned it off I'd be done. But eventually, my parents got me not a VMU, they got me a Mad Catz memory card. So I could save, but I totally missed out on Chow Adventure and all the things the VMU could do with their games.
SEGA Dreamcast games are now online, unleashing the ultimate horror, your fellow Americans. Jack into SegaNet through your Dreamcast console and join your countrymen in the virtual arena.
One cool thing they had was this thing right here, the modem, right? That, to me, sold the console, right? It's like, you could go on the internet. I never had access to the internet. I mean, we didn't have cell phones back then, so it was pretty unique that I could just get this little device that's so tiny I could take it to my friend's house and then I could just plug it in and we could all go on the internet, go on IRC chat rooms and just basically be up to no good.
I could go home from school, jump on the Dreamcast, connect to the internet and play it with my friends at school. Or in this case I used to go to my cousin's house and he'd have it online and we'd be the ability to have the controller and the keyboard and you can type to people and kind of all the rest of it. It's just absolutely brilliant. Beautiful game even now, I still play it today.
We would be doing this all summer and then when his mom would come in and tell him, hey, why don't you get a job? He's like, well, I mean, I'm playing this game that never ends. That was his excuse. It's never going to end. So he never got a job, right?
I would have been about 7, almost 8 when the Dreamcast was discontinued, and my dad, he tried to explain to me what that meant, right? Like, hey, they're not going to make any more games for this thing. The ones you got are kind of the ones you're going to get, and I didn't understand. I was like, I play it, I have fun with this thing. Why would they stop making? What do you mean?
And I think if we'd seen a few more years of the Dreamcast's natural life, then who knows where it could have gone to be honest. So yeah, it felt like a bit of a kick, and it was very sad to learn that the Dreamcast was being discontinued, but it's one of those things.
Something that had very little impact in terms of commercial success could still go on and have a huge impact in terms of cultural significance, and it still does to this day. 20 odd years later, it's still a culturally significant console.
If it wasn't for the Sega Dreamcast, if it wasn't for the games on the Dreamcast and the music that were made for those said games, I probably wouldn't have as big of a love for video game soundtracks and video game fan-made remixes. I would probably still have a love for it, but I wouldn't have as big of a love.
I mean, just look at the sheer variety. We have Shenmue, Metropolis Street Racer, Jet Set Radio, Sonic Adventure, Crazy Taxi. They all had their distinctive sounds, from orchestral, EDM, hip-hop and funk, rock, punk rock. It certainly opened up my ears to listen to different stuff.
I think it's one of the things that pushed me into a career in tech and design. I would upload my VMU saves from Shenmue. We never got Shenmue 2 on the Dreamcast in Australia, and I played the NTSC version. So I would upload the NTSC save through the Dreamcast web browser with all of my save content from Shenmue 1, change some hex values, and then download it back to my Dreamcast, where I could then import my save into Shenmue 2. And I remember thinking at the time how great that was, and it sparked my interest in learning coding, and ultimately I ended up being a developer.
Whether I played them at the time or later on, things like Jet Set Radio, Crazy Taxi, the super underrated Power Stone, these were all games that I think have absolutely had an influence on how I make games. A lot of people on the team have also played these titles. I think the Dreamcast and those kind of games are almost like the missing link between the kind of 90s gaming experience, atypical gaming experience, and the 2000s.
The legacy it left with me was that I wrote a book about it. It influenced me that much in my formative years that it stuck with me through adulthood, through all of the higher education, weird jobs that you have to do in order to make ends meet, moving from different places, finding a partner to be with, all of that stuff. It stuck with me throughout, and things have come and gone, fads, things that I've enjoyed have come, gone. The Dreamcast has stayed static in my life. It's something that I've always enjoyed and will never not enjoy.
I believe the Dreamcast is the most successful failure in video game history. No, it didn't bring Sega up out of the hole that they had dug themselves into. No, it wasn't a multimedia empire like the PS2 was. No, it didn't have as big an install base as any of the 3 succeeding consoles in that generation. But for those of us who did have a Dreamcast, we've loved it so much over the past 20 years that the community is still flourishing and thriving. New games are being developed not only by fans, but by entire studios still selling them. People have taken the online of the Dreamcast that was defunct after so many years and brought it back. People are able to play with their friends again. That's crazy. The legacy of the Dreamcast is still being written. And that's the wonderful thing.